Hey Knights! So this is another 2 chapters for the Running Through the Stars. So this is chapter 21 and 22. Chapter 21, Parting of the Ways. The Dalek turned to her. You know the doctor. You understand him. You will predict his actions. Nah, she replied. I don't know, and even then, I wouldn't tell you. Predict, it ordered, and she backed up slowly. Predict! Predict! Another Dalek turned. TARDIS detected in flight. Launch missiles, the first Dalek ordered, and Jessie's eyes widened. Exterminate. You can't, she shouted at it. The TARDIS hasn't got any defense. You're going to kill him. You have predicted correctly. She swallowed hard. We've got incoming, Jack warned. The doctor held onto the console tightly as the first missile hit, and bounced off with a fireball. Jack poked his head up from where he was with the extrapolator. The extrapolator's working, he reported gleefully. We've got a fully functional force field, he grinned. Try saying that when you're drunk. And now, for my next trick, the doctor told him, flipping a few switches. As they materialized inside the main ship, he smiled. Structures. Exterminate, the Dalek shouted, aiming and firing. It missed, and Jack fired with the defabricator. The doctor ran over to Jessie as the Dalek exploded, and she shakily stood. You did it, she whispered. He hugged her tightly, and she hugged him back just as hard. Feels like I haven't seen you in years, she chuckled. I told you I'd come and get you. Never doubted it, she told him fiercely. I did, he admitted, pulling back and looking her over. You all right? He exhaled slowly and nodded. Yeah, you? Not bad, been better. Hey, don't I get a hug? Jack asked with a whine in his voice. Jessie laughed. Oh, come here. I was talking to him, Jack joked as he hugged her anyways. Oh, I thought I'd never see you again, Jessie sighed. You were lucky, Jack hefted the defabricator. That was just a one-shot wonder. Drained the gun of all its power supply. Now it's just a piece of junk. Jessie kneeled down next to the shard Dalek. You said they were extinct. She looked up at the doctor. How come they're still alive? 1 minute they're the greatest threat in the universe, Jack commented. The next minute they've vanished out of time and space. They went off to fight a bigger war, the doctor replied. The Time War. I thought it was just a legend. No legend, Jessie told him. I was there, the doctor added. The war between the Daleks and the Time Lords, with the whole of creation at stake. My people were destroyed, but they took the Dalek with them. I almost thought it was worth it. He glared at the Dalek. Now, it turns out they died from nothing. Jessie looked to the doors. There's thousands of them now. We can hardly stop one. What are we going to do? The doctor stood up straight. No good standing around here, chin wagging. Human race, you gossip all day. Jessie giggled and then blanched as he headed for the doors. The Daleks have got the answers. Let's go and meet the neighbors. You can't go out there, she shouted, running after him with Jack behind her. She heard the calls of exterminate, then blinked in surprise when the shot stopped a good few meters from the TARDIS. The doctor nodded. Is that it? He taunted. Useless. Null points, he grinned, gesturing to Jessie and Jack. It's all right. Come on out. The force field can hold back anything. Almost anything, Jack corrected. Jessie punched him in the shoulder as the doctor huffed in annoyance. Yes, but I wasn't going to tell them that. Thanks. Sorry, Jack apologized with a whisper. The doctor turned to the Daleks. Do you know what they call me in the ancient legends of the Dalek homeworld? He asked. The oncoming storm. You might have removed all your emotions, but I reckon right down deep in your DNA, there's one little spark left, and that's fear. Doesn't it just burn when you face me? He stood straighter. So tell me, how did you survive this time war? Jessie looked at Jack in horror when a deeper, louder voice answered. They survived through me. Jessie slowly followed the doctor, one hand on his arm as they approached a much larger Dalek, easily as tall as the room. The one-eyed mutant creature visible for all to see that it was lounging on a throne. Jessie, Captain, the doctor said slowly. This is the Emperor of the Daleks. They have an emperor? She couldn't help but ask. He chuckled softly, then sobered as the Empire spoke. You destroyed us, Doctor. The Dalek race died in your inferno, but my ship survived, falling through time, crippled, but alive. I get it, he replied. Do not interrupt, the Daleks began shouting. Do not interrupt. Do not interrupt. The doctor stiffened, taking Jesse's hand off of his arm. I think you're forgetting something, he said, gritting his teeth. I'm the doctor, and if there's one thing I can do, it's talk. Jesse nodded as if it would help his cause, and Jack took his cue to start nodding as well. I've got 5 billion languages, and you haven't got one way of stopping me. So if anyone's going to be shutting up, it's you, he shouted at them, and they all scooted back a few good inches. Jesse smirked as the doctor turned back to the Empire, casually, as if nothing had happened. So, where were we? We waited here in the dark space, damaged but rebuilding, the Emperor rumbled. Centuries passed, and we quietly infiltrated the system of Earth, harvesting the waste of humanity. The prisoners, the refugees, the dispossessed, they all came to us. The bodies were filtered, pulped, shifted. The seed of the human race is perverted. Only one cell in a billion was fit to be nurtured. So you created an army of Daleks out of the dead, the doctor summed up. Jesse looked around in horror. That'll make them half human. Do not blaspheme, the Dalek shouted at her, and Jack wrapped an arm around her protectively. Do not blaspheme! Do not blaspheme! Everything human has been purged, the Empire told her. I cultivated pure and blessed Dalek. Since when did the Dalek have a concept of blasphemy? The doctor asked. I reached into the dirt and made new life. I am the god of all Daleks. Worship him, the Daleks chorused. Worship him! Worship him! They're insane, the doctor told the two of them, turning away from the Emperor. Hiding in silence for hundreds of years, that's enough to make anyone mad. He turned back. Driven mad by your own flesh, the stink of humanity, you hate your own existence. He turned to Jesse, and that makes them more deadly than ever. We're going. You may not leave my presence, the Emperor told him. Stay where you are, one Dalek ordered. The doctor simply gave him a small smirk, and then the three of them entered the TARDIS as the dogs began shooting at them. Exterminate! Exterminate! Jack returned to the console, beginning to set up for the return to the game station. Jessie began to join him, but she stopped when the doctor didn't follow. She turned to see him against the doors of the TARDIS, for once looking vulnerable. She slowly walked back and slipped one of her hands into his. He looked down at her, and she inhaled slightly at the raw emotion in his eyes. We'll get out of this, she whispered. We always do. He swallowed. That's the second time I thought you were dead because of one of them, he told her hoarsely. That time, for real. I'm not leaving you again, she told him firmly. I promised forever. Jess, he whispered, then hugged her tightly, as if to assure himself that she was really there. She blinked back the tears in her eyes and hugged him back, arms around his neck as his went around her waist. She was definitely glad Jack left them that way. Turn everything up, the doctor ordered when they got back to the game station. All transmitters full power, wide open. Now, do it. What does this do? Pavel asked, nodding to Jesse in acknowledgement. Stop the Daleks from transmitting on board, the doctor replied, not releasing his grip on her arm. How did you get on? Did you contact Earth? Well, Pavel began, and Jesse winced, knowing this would be bad. We tried to warn them, but all they did was suspend our license because we stopped the programs. And the planet's just sitting there, defenseless, the doctor muttered, then blinked and looked at the blonde girl still standing there, arms crossed, looking at him. Linda, why are you still on board? I told you to evacuate everyone. She wouldn't go, Pavel muttered. Didn't want to leave you, Linda replied shortly. Jesse's eyebrows shot up, and the other woman cut in. There weren't enough shuttles anyways, or I wouldn't be here. We've got about 100 people stranded on floor 0. Is there a guy named Roderick still down there? Jesse asked curiously. Yes, the woman confirmed, looking confused. Why? Damn, she muttered. Out of every person still on board. You can go slap him if you want, Jack offered. No way in hell, the doctor vetoed. Oh my god, Pavel gasped. The fleet is moving. They're on their way. The doctor growled and began pulling bits out of conducts. Dalek plan, he muttered. Big mistake. Because what have they left me with? He looked up expecting an answer, but Jessie just shook her head. I'm no computer geek like Stark, Doctor. Anyone? He shook his head. Oh, come on. It's obvious. A great big transmitter. This station. If I can change the signal, fold it back, sequence it. Anyone? Jack's eyes suddenly brightened. You've got to be kidding. The doctor grinned. Give the man a medal. A delta wave? Jack asked incredulously. The doctor nodded in excitement. A delta wave. What's a delta wave? Jessie asked, feeling left out. A wave of Van Cassonade energy, Jack replied. It fries your brain. Stand in the way of a delta wave and your head gets barbecued. And this place can transmit a massive wave. Wipe out the Daleks, the doctor finished. Well, get started and do it then, Linda encouraged. Trouble is, wave this size, building this big, brain as clever as mine. Jessie snorted at the last bit, and the doctor threw her a smirk. Should take about, 3 days? How long till the fleet arrives? Pavel grimaced. 22 minutes. We're screwed, Jessie sighed. We've now got a force field so they can't blast us out of the sky, but that doesn't stop the Daleks from physically invading, Jack reported a while later amongst a bunch of stuff only he and the doctor seemed to understand. Do they know about the Delta Wave? Pavel asked. They'll have worked it out at the same time, Jack replied. So they want to stop the doctor. That means they've got to get to this level, 500. Now I can concentrate the extrapolator around the top 6 levels, 500 to 495. So they'll penetrate the station below the level, at level 494, and fight their way up. Who are they fighting? Us. Jack, Jessie asked, poking her head up. And what are we fighting with? Pavel asked. The guards had guns with bastic bullets, Jack replied, ignoring the look Jessie was giving him. That's enough to blow a Dalek wide open. There's 5 of us, the woman pointed out. Jess, you can help me, the doctor said quickly. I need all these wires stripping bare. Something she knew how to do. Got it. Right, the woman muttered. Now there's 4 of us. Then let's move it, Jack replied. Into the lift. Isolate the lift controls. Linda walked up to the doctor, and Jessie narrowed her eyes at her. I just wanted to say, she shifted a little. Thanks, I suppose, and I'll do my best. The doctor nodded. Me too. They made to hug, but the doctor just chuckled awkwardly and held out a hand to shake. When Linda did, Jack came forward next, smiling at them. It's been fun, but I guess this is the goodbye. Jessie stood up quickly. Don't talk like that. The doctor's going to do it. You just watch him. Jack smiled sadly and walked up to her. Jessie, you are worth fighting for. He kissed her gently, then whispered in her ear. He loves you, even if he doesn't know it yet. Her eyes widened a little, and he patted her shoulder before turning to the doctor. Wish I'd never met you, Doctor. I was much better off as a coward. Jack kissed him too, and Jessie held back a small giggle. Jack saluted both of them. See you in hell. He and Linda walked off together, and Jessie swallowed as she watched them go. He's going to be all right, isn't he? She asked half-heartedly. The doctor gave no answer. Jessie stopped working for a few seconds, considering something in her mind. Suppose... The doctor looked up from what he was working on. What? Jessie grinned a little, shaking her head. It was a stupid idea. Nothing. You said suppose. No, I was just thinking, Jessie told him. I mean, obviously you can't, but you've got a time machine. Why can't you just go back to the last week or something and warn them? As soon as the TARDIS lands in that second, I become part of events, stuck in the timeline. Jessie started going back to stripping the wires down. Figured it'd be something like that. The doctor leaned forward. There's another thing the TARDIS can do, he offered hesitantly, and she raised an eyebrow. It could take us away. We could leave. Let history take its course. We go to Marbella in 1989. He loves you, even if he doesn't know it yet, Jack had told her. They could get away. But Jessie knew better than that. She knew the doctor better than that. Yeah, but you'd never do that, she told him. No, but you could ask. Jessie looked at him pointedly, and he smiled at her. Never even occurred to you, did it? Well, Jessie said slowly, smiling back. I guess I'm just too good. The doctor finished with his side of the work and stood. The Delta Wave started building. How long does it need? Jessie pulled up the schematics on the console, numbers and calculations making no sense to her. But when she looked at the doctor, his expression had tightened with obvious stress. Okay, so this is bad, she guessed. How bad is it? The doctor grinned and turned to her. Jessie Nightshade, you're a genius. She blinked confused, and he elaborated. We can do it. If I use the TARDIS to cross my old timeline. He kissed her forehead, and she blinked, still a little confused by his enthusiasm. Yes. The doctor took a deep breath as she followed him into the TARDIS. Hold that down and keep position, he told her, pointing to a lever on the opposite side of the console. What's it do? She asked as she did just that. He forced a smile for her. Cancels the buffers. If I'm very clever, and I'm more than clever, I'm brilliant, I might just save the world. Or rip it apart. She made a face. I'd go for the first one. Me too, he agreed. Now, I've just got to go and power up the game station. Hold on. She nodded, and he ran back out the doors. He took a deep breath, looking down at the cables. He turned around, looking back at the TARDIS, then pointed his screwdriver at it. He knew that Jessie would know what was going on the moment the engines powered up. And when they did, she definitely knew. Doctor, what are you doing? She shouted. It's moving! The doctor closed his eyes as the TARDIS began to materialize, taking Jessie with it. The Delta Wave would destroy everything in its path. There wouldn't be enough time to fine-tune it. Everyone would die, including Jack. Including him. But at least Jessie was safe. Doctor, let me out! Jessie shouted, running from her lever and banging on the door of the TARDIS. Let me out! Doctor, what have you done? She knew that if she tried to face through the doors, she wouldn't be in the game station. She'd be in the vortex, whatever that was. So she slumped against the doors, sniffling as tears slid from her eyes. This is Emergency Program 1. She stiffened and slowly turned to see a blue hologram of the doctor being projected so it faced her. Jess, now listen. This is important. If this message is activated, then it can only mean one thing. We must be in danger, and I mean fatal. I'm dead or about to die any second with no chance of escape. No, Jessie whispered, approaching the hologram. No! And that's okay. Hope it's a good death. But I promise to look after you, and that's what I'm doing. The TARDIS is taking you home. I won't let you, she shouted. And I bet you're fussing and moaning now, the hologram continued with a snort. Typical. But hold on and just listen a bit more. The TARDIS can never return for me. Emergency Program 1 means I'm facing an enemy that should never get their hands on this machine. So this is what you should do. Let the TARDIS die. She slowly walked back over to the console, pinching the bridge of her nose as the tears came faster. Just let this old box gather dust. No one can open it. No one will ever even notice it. Let it become a strange little thing standing on a street corner, and over the years, the world will move on, and the box will be buried. And if you want to remember me, then you can do one thing. That's all. One thing. She gasped when the hologram turned to face her, and she made a noise that sounded like a cat being strangled, when she saw the look in his eyes that she saw a toss between Tony and Pepper. One Jack had told her about just minutes ago. Have a good life. Do that for me, Jess. Have a fantastic life. You can't do this to me, she whispered as the hologram flickered. You can't. She tried working on the console. Take me back, she shouted at it. Take me back! She looked up when the engine stopped. No! She ran for the doors and opened them, inhaling sharply when she saw London. She ran back inside, smacking the console. Come on, fly! How do you fly? Come on, help me! When the TARDIS didn't respond, she swallowed. She headed back for the doors and opened them to see a red-headed blur flying across the pavement. 2 other people behind her. I knew it! Celine shouted gleefully as she, Gemma, and Fitz ran up. I was all the way down Clifton Parade, and I heard the engines. I thought, there's only one thing that makes a noise like that. Gemma slid to a stop, looking at her worriedly. Jessie? She asked. Where's the doctor? Where's Jack? Celine looked at her worriedly. What is it? She whispered. Jessie just sobbed, and Celine hugged her tightly. Jessie, I've called up the internal laser codes. The doctor looked up from what he was doing when he heard Jack's voice. There should be a different number on every screen. Can you read them out to me? She's not here, he told Jack. Jack groaned. Of all the times to take a leak. When she gets back, tell her to read me the codes. She's not coming back. What do you mean? Where'd she go? Just get on with your work. It was a little while before Jack replied, and the doctor turned to the view screen. You took her home, didn't you? The doctor nodded. Yeah. The Delta Wave. Is it ever going to be ready? Tell him the truth, Doctor. The doctor looked up as the Dalek Empire appeared on another screen. There is every possibility the Delta Wave could be complete, but no possibility of refining it. The Delta Wave must kill every living human in its path, with no distinction between human and Dalek. All things will die by your hand. Doctor, Jack said slowly, the rage of this transmitter covers the entire Earth. You would destroy Dalek and humans together. If I am God, the creator of all things, then what does that make you, Doctor? The doctor clenched the console tighter. There are colonies out there. The human race would survive in some shape or form, and you're the only Dalek in existence. The whole universe is in danger if I let you live. Do you see, Jack? That's the decision I've got to make for every living thing. Die as a human or live as a Dalek. He hesitated. What would you do? Jack nodded firmly. You sent her home. She's safe. Keep working. But he will exterminate you, the Empire protested. Never doubted him, Jack said fiercely, giving the doctor another nod and an encouraging smile. Never will. The doctor smiled back as Jack cut the transmission, then turned to the Empire. Now you tell me, God of all Daleks, because there's one thing I never worked out. The words, bad wolf, spread across time and space, everywhere, drawing me in. How'd you manage that? I did nothing. Oh, come on, there's no secrets now, your worship. They are not part of my design. This is the truth of God. The doctor raised his gaze to the Bad Wolf Corporation sign, swallowing slightly. What are you, Bad Wolf? Jessie merely poked and prodded her meal as the S.H.I.E.L.D. team talked around her. And it's gone up market, this place, Coulson was saying. They're doing little tubs of coleslaw now. He shuddered. It's not very nice. It tastes a bit sort of clinical. Have you tried that new pizza place down Minto Road? Celine asked. Sky raised an eyebrow. Oh, what's it selling? May and Celine both looked at her incredulously. Pizza, May said slowly. That's nice, Sky said absently, and Jessie huffed. Do they deliver? Yeah, Fitz confirmed. Oh, come on, Jessie. You haven't even taken a bite, Gemma sighed, leaning over. Have something to eat. 200,000 years in the future, Jessie said, leaning back in her chair and looking out the window. He's dying, and there's nothing I can do. Well, like you said, Fitz told her. 200,000 years. It's way off. Jessie shook her head. But it's not. It's now. That fight is happening right now, and he's fighting for us. For the whole planet. She made a noise of frustration, stabbing her fork into her polystyrene container, effectively making it stay. And I'm just sitting here eating chips. Sky leaned forward. Listen to me. God knows I have hated that man, but right now, I love him. And do you know why? Because he did the right thing. He sent you back to us. Well, what do I do every day then, Sky? Jessie asked. What do? I get up, work around S.H.I.E.L.D., take missions that involve killing people, then come back and eat more chips and go to bed. Is that it? That's what the rest of us do, Celine replied with a shrug. Jessie groaned. But I can't. Why? Fitz challenged. Because you're better than us? Fitz, Celine snapped. No, I didn't mean that, Jessie said quickly. But it was. It was a better life, and I don't mean all the traveling and seeing aliens and spaceships and things. That doesn't matter. The doctor showed me a better way of living life. You all know. He's shown you too, and that you don't just give up. You don't just let things happen. You make a stand and you say no. You have the guts to do what's right when everyone else just runs away. She swallowed back tears that began to come back. And I just can't. She broke off with a sob and ran through the wall, heading for the closest park. She heard Celine and Gemma call for her, but she kept on running. She'd been running for a long time since she'd met the doctor. And now she didn't want to stop. She slumped down on a park bench, putting her head in her hands. She didn't know how long she'd been sitting there before she felt two others sit next to her. You can't spend the rest of your life thinking about the doctor, May told her, rubbing her back. Jessie looked up warily. But how do I forget him? You've got to start living your own life, Gemma replied. You know, a proper life, like the kind he's never had. The sort of life that you could have with all of us here. Jessie opened her mouth to reply, then froze when she saw the large letter printed on the playground asphalt. Bad Wolf. She stood. Oh my God, she gasped. She spun in a circle, seeing the words everywhere she looked. Over here, she pointed. They kept doing it. It's over here as well. Gemma looked around, nodding. It's been here for years. It's just a phrase. Jessie, it's just words. I thought it was a warning, she told him, ignoring their confused looks. Maybe it's the opposite. Maybe it's a message. She smiled, beginning to understand. The same words written down now in 200 years in the future. It's a link between me and the doctor. Bad Wolf here, Bad Wolf there. If it's a message, what's it saying? May asked. Jessie grinned wider. It's telling me I can get back. The least I can do is help him escape. She ran back towards the TARDIS at full speed, May and Gemma running behind her. She unlocked the doors, ignoring when Celine joined them. All the TARDIS needs to do is make a return trip, she said, looking over the console. Just reverse. Yeah, but we still can't do it, Gemma told her. The doctor always said the TARDIS was telepathic, Jessie explained. The thing is alive. It can listen. It's not listening now, is it? Celine asked. We need to get inside it, Jessie replied, walking over to the console area where Margaret, the Slovene, had looked into the heart of the TARDIS. Gemma, the last time I saw you in Cardiff with Fitz, with the Slovene, the middle bit here opened. There was this light. The doctor said it was the heart of the TARDIS. If we can open it, I can make contact. I can tell it what to do. Jessie, May whispered. Jessie looked up, freezing at the look of her superior officer's face. Yeah? If you go back, you're going to die, May told her. Jessie nodded, and that's the risk I've got to take. There's nothing left for me here. Nothing? Celine asked incredulously. No. Jessie smiled as Gemma began to back her up, smiling sadly at her. Because you love him, and if I know what I saw in Cardiff, he loves you too. That's what Jack said before he left, Jessie said. Gemma nodded. I'm in. May did as well. Let's do it. Celine took a deep breath. All right, if that's what you think, let's get this thing open. Coulson, Fitz, and Skye exited their car to see May and Celine working with a heavy chain on the back of the van they'd used to ride out. What the hell are you two doing? Coulson demanded as they approached. Celine barely even acknowledged them as she slid into the driver's seat. Something incredibly crazy. She put her foot down on the accelerator, and the van began to drive forward. Skye looked inside the TARDIS to see the chain attached to part of the console. Jessie and Gemma keeping an eye on it while May was outside. Faster, Jessie shouted. May made a motion with her hands, and Celine gritted her teeth as she kept pushing the accelerator. Come on. It's not working, Gemma called. Skye winced when the chain snapped, and Celine hurried to switch to the brakes. Jessie kicked at the console in frustration, huffing in annoyance. Jack, how are we doing? The doctor asked, looking around for floor 500. 495 should be good, Jack replied with an air of confidence. I like 495. They're flying up the ventilation shaft, Linda said over the comms. No, wait a minute. The doctor looked up as she continued, a waver in her voice. Oh my god, why are they doing that? They're going down. A few seconds later, he heard the whine of something turning off. Floor 0, Linda whispered. They killed them all. The doctor sucked in a breath and continued to work. Jessie put her head in her hand, sitting in the captain's chair. Skye approached, leaning on the console. It was never going to work, she told her gently. The doctor knew that. He just wanted you to be safe. I can't give up, Jessie replied. Lock the door. Jessie looked up as Coulson walked up as well. Walk away. Jessie slowly sat up straighter as she got an idea. Grant wouldn't give up. Skye stiffened instantly. Well, he's not here, is she? She asked tightly. And even if he was, he'd say the same. No, he wouldn't, Jessie insisted. He'd tell me to try anything I could. If I could save the doctor's life, try anything. Well, we're never going to know. I know. He told me to find someone else to lean on when he died. Jessie swallowed. Skye, I was there. Don't be ridiculous, Skye whispered. The doctor took me back in time, to the clairvoyant, the one mission I never took. Don't say that, Skye shouted. Remember when Grant died? You said it yourself. Someone had to have been there with him. Someone locked the doors on the other side, and you couldn't get through. The sonic screwdriver didn't let you. She turned to Coulson. The first time you died, she said, desperate now. Where Loki was being held, there was someone who came to you, a girl, dark hair, telling you that you were going to a magical place, and everything was going to be all right. She nodded as his eyes began to widen. Yeah, that girl? That was me. You saw me. Oh my god, Coulson whispered, sitting down on the console. The doctor took me back in time to be with you when you died, and he did it again for Grant, Jessie told him. And when I broke, he was there for me. He may be an alien, but I love him. Nothing is going to change that. She looked at Skye. He took me back so Grant could have someone there. That's how good he is. Stop it, Skye finally screamed out, tears streaming down her face. Just stop it! Skye, Coulson shouted as Skye ran out of the TARDIS, her legs pumping. He ran after her, and Jessie curled up in the chair, beginning to cry herself. Why can't you just take me back? She sobbed. She never noticed the TARDIS lights flicker in response to her. Linda, the doctor shouted into the comms. What's happening on Earth? The fleet's descending, she reported, sounding tense, her voice getting higher. They're bombing whole continents. Europea, Pacifica, the New American Alliance. Australia's just gone. There's got to be something else we can do, Celine said as they gathered in front of the TARDIS. Jessie shook her head. Maybe Skye was right. Maybe we should just lock the door and walk away. No, May said abruptly, turning to Jessie. We're not having that. We're not having you just give up, Gemma agreed, pacing. No way. We just need something stronger than the van. Something bigger. Something... She stopped abruptly. Something like that. Jessie's head shot up when a huge yellow recovery truck drove up the way. Skye hopped out of the driver's side, Coulson in the passenger seat. Right, Skye said, walking up. We've only got this until 1800, so get on with it. Where the hell did you get this from? Jessie asked, smiling. We're S.H.I.E.L.D., Coulson replied. You are right, Jessie. Grant would have told us to keep on fighting. Get on with it now. Celine took the keys from Skye and ran up to the truck. Jessie took a deep breath. Here we go. I've got a problem. The doctor looked up at Linda's voice. Linda, he asked. They found me. You'll be all right, Linda. That side of the station's reinforced against meters. Hope so, she replied. You know what they say about Earth workmanship. He heard the sound of glass shattering, and he heard Linda scream before the other line went dead. He closed his eyes, silently mourning her death. He looked back up when he heard Jack's voice, from just outside the door. Last man standing. For God's sake, Doctor, finish that thing and kill them. First, finish that thing and kill mankind, the Emperor countered. Fitz, Coulson, Skye, and Gemma were watching as Celine and May worked out to get the TARDIS open. Keep going, Jessie shouted from where she was inside. Put your foot down, Skye shouted up. Celine must have, because the chains began to strain. Faster, Jessie called. Give it some more, Celine, Gemma shouted as well. Keep going, keep going. Give it some more, Coulson shouted. With one last tug, the console of the TARDIS burst open. Jessie walked over, looking inside at the golden light, billowing out. She didn't react as the golden energy began to stream into her eyes. She watched time and timelines fly through her head, and she heard a dim song and a wolf howl. My doctor, she whispered. Jessie! Celine shouted. Jessie simply raised a hand and snapped her fingers, the doors of the TARDIS slamming shut in the face of her best friend. She kept taking the energy into herself as the TARDIS began its dance through time, on its way to the doctor. Her doctor. Chapter 22. All comes to dust. It's ready, the doctor announced, then looked up to see Daleks pouring into the room from all sides. He quickly put a hand down on the switch. You really want to think about this? He warned, because if I activate the signal, every living creature dies. I am immortal, the Emperor replied. Do you want to put that to the test? I want to see you become like me. Hail the Doctor, the great exterminator. The Doctor gripped the lever tighter. I'll do it. Then prove yourself, Doctor, the Emperor challenged. What are you, coward or killer? The Doctor swallowed, closing his eyes. He let go of the switch. Coward, he replied firmly. Any day. Mankind will be harvested because of your weakness. The Doctor nodded in acknowledgement. And what about me? Am I becoming one of your angels? You are the heathen. You will be exterminated. The Doctor sighed. Maybe it's time, he admitted, closing his eyes. As the Daleks closed in, he could have sworn he heard the sound of the TARDIS's engine. His eyes snapped open at the sound as the sound increased in volume. Wait a minute! Alert! One of the Daleks shouted as the TARDIS materialized behind them. The Doctor spun, looking at his ship in shock. TARDIS materializing. You will not escape, the Emperor cried in reply. The doors to the TARDIS opened, and the Doctor threw up his hand as bright golden light flooded out from inside. Jessie stepped out, her eyes glowing gold, her Asgardian armor forming over her body. The Doctor's eyes widened in astonishment as she approached. What have you done? He shouted at her. She looked at him. I looked into the TARDIS, she replied, her voice echoing, and the TARDIS looked into me. The heart of the TARDIS, the Doctor realized, his fear and horror growing. You looked into the time vortex. Jessie, no one's meant to see that. This is the abomination, the Emperor shouted. Exterminate, a Dalek declared. The Doctor braced himself as it fired, but Jessie raised her hand, her eyes turning to the Dalek. The beam was stopped by her hand, to the Doctor's astonishment. I am the Bad Wolf, she announced, looking around. I create myself. She looked up at the words on the sign. I take the words, I scatter them in time and space. She raised her hand and made a swiping motion, and the words spun out. A message to lead myself here. Jessie, you've got to stop this, the Doctor pleaded to her, even as she stood tall, not moving. You've got to stop this now. You've got the entire vortex running through your head. You're going to burn. And then she finally looked at him, the glow in her eyes dimming so he could see her eyes. And he was astonished to see tears streaking down her cheeks. I want you safe, she whispered. My doctor. He inhaled at her possessiveness, protected from the false god. You cannot hurt me, the Emperor protested. I am immortal. You are tiny, Jessie spat, looking back up at the view screen. I can see the whole of time and space. She raised a hand to one of the Daleks. Every single atom of your existence, and I divide them. The Dalek disintegrated gently into a shower of gold light, and more enveloped the Dalek Legion, even as the Doctor saw ripples of dark red and black beginning to run over her skin. The Aether reacting to the power of the Bad Wolf. Everything must come to dust. All things. Everything dies. She glowed more, and the Aether was released as well as Daleks everywhere began to crumble. The Time War ends. I will not die, the Emperor yelled, even as he himself began to disintegrate. I cannot die. The Doctor turned back to Jessie, surrounded in a cloud of gold, black, and red. The power of the time vortex and the Aether combined scared him almost as much as the Daleks did. Jess, you've done it, he told her. Now stop. Just let it go. Jessie swallowed, still staring straight ahead. How can I let go of this? She asked. I bring life. The Doctor felt a pull in his gut as he felt her bring Jack back to life outside the doors. He shook his head at her. But this is wrong. You can't control life and death. But I can, she insisted, looking at him, glowing more gold as the red and black began to fade. The sun and the moon, the day and the night. More tears began streaming down her cheeks. But why do they hurt? She asked, a crack in her voice. The power's going to kill you, he told her hoarsely, and it's my fault. Jessie's eyes flared in pain, but she still continued on. I can see everything, she whispered, looking at him, but at the same time not at him. All that is, all that was, all that ever could be. The Doctor stood, making a decision as he walked closer to her. That's what I see, he told her gently. All the time, and doesn't it just drive you mad? My head, she sobbed. The Doctor held out his arms, gesturing to her. Come here. She slowly approached, the pain in her voice more evident. It's killing me. He took her arms and looked down at her with a sad smile. I think you need a doctor. Had Jack been there, he would have snorted. The Doctor leaned down and kissed Jessie gently, tilting her head up slightly and beckoning to the time vortex in her head. The energy swirled from her eyes into his, and he felt the crushing weight of all time and space begin to bear down on him. When he had taken it all, he slowly pulled away from Jessie. Her eyes slowly opened back to their dark color. He had time to give her a small smile before she fainted. He caught her quickly and laid her down on the game station floor, brushing a few of her tears away, smiling as he finally admitted to himself that this was worth the violet and bronze Asgardian, who had somehow managed to steal his hearts without himself realizing. He stood, looking back towards the TARDIS, and he exhaled slowly, sending the vortex back into the console. He closed his eyes, feeling the pain begin to build up more. He had been right when he said the time vortex would kill Jessie. Now, it was killing him. He picked Jessie up bridal style and carried her into the TARDIS, closing the doors behind them. He draped her on the floor, then stood and walked over to the console, flicking switches. He watched as the regeneration energy rushed up his hand, and he bowed his head, closing his eyes. This life was almost over. The least he could do was make sure the next one could be better for Jessie. The TARDIS finally understood as her Asgardian took in the vortex. She finally knew why this girl was so special. This girl had healed her thief, more than she could have ever imagined. He needed her like he needed somebody else, but she couldn't stay with him forever the way she was. So, as her thief spun her through the rift, she cracked open her heart a little, and some of the vortex sprawled out once more, seeping into the violet and bronze Asgardian's body. As they danced through time, she steadily began to change the girl, not enough to be noticeable, but enough that when the time came, the two would never be separated. Her thief and her wolf in the TARDIS, just as it should be. Okay, so that was chapter... Wait. Okay, so I'm actually going to end off with the last bit here. So this is the last of the first book for the series. So the epilogue, I think that's how you pronounce it, epilogue, like that extra bit for like what happens after. Jessie moaned softly as she came to. She found herself on the TARDIS floor, hearing the engines in flight. She frowned, trying to remember everything. She propped herself on her elbows and tried to ignore the throbbing in her head. What happened? She asked to nobody in particular. Don't you remember? She turned sharply, wincing at her headache. The Doctor was leaning on the console, looking at her worriedly. She slowly sat up, shaking her head. It's like there's this singing. That's right, the Doctor said in a slightly joking tone. I sang a song and the Daleks ran away. She knew that wasn't it. She could read him that well. Something had happened, and he wasn't about to tell her what had happened. I was at home, she said slowly, trying to remember. No, wait a minute. No, I wasn't. She looked around. I was in the TARDIS, and there was this light. I can't remember anything else. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw something rush up the Doctor's skin. She turned back to him, standing as he chuckled. Jesse Nightshade. He shook his head. I was going to take you so many places. Barcelona. She raised raised an eyebrow as he quickly began to ramble. Not the city Barcelona, the planet Barcelona. You'd love it. Fantastic place. They've got dogs with no noses. He grinned, but to her it was forced. Imagine how many times a day you end up telling that joke, and it's still funny. Then why can't we go? She asked. Maybe you will, and maybe I will, but not like this. You're not making any sense. I might never make sense again. I might have 2 heads, or no head. Imagine me with no head. He shot her a look. And don't say that's an improvement. Oh my God, she whispered, realizing what was going on. But it's a bit dodgy, this process. You never know what you're going to end up with. He groaned in pain and doubled over, clutching the console for support. She ran forward. Doctor! Stay away, he said in reply, holding up a hand to stop her. She did, but inches from him. You're regenerating, aren't you? She asked in a whisper. He straightened slightly, still leaning on the console, but he nodded. I absorbed all the energy of the time vortex, and no one's meant to do that. Every cell in my body is dying. I'm changing, Jess. I'm not going to see you again. She swallowed, and he raised a hand to her face, brushing away a tear that had slipped from her eyes. Not like this, anyway. Not with this dappled face. She hugged him tightly on impulse, and she could practically feel the energy rushing through his body. He hugged her back, whispering something into her ear, in the language the TARDIS would not translate, but it sent a shiver down her spine. He gently gripped her arms and pulled back. And before I go... Don't say that, she whispered. The doctor shook his head, kissing her forehead. Jess. She raised a hand over her mouth as he whispered the name only he called her now. Before I go, I just wanted to tell you, you were fantastic. You were fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. She smiled faintly. And you know what? What? He grinned at her. So was I. She smiled at him as well, and then the gold light she'd seen go through his skin enveloped him completely. She stumbled backwards against the coral structures, flinging an arm up to cover her eyes to block the light. When it faded, she slowly lowered her arm. She gasped and shocked at the man standing where her doctor was before. Gone was the soldier that she was used to seeing. Gone were the blue eyes that were hard yet vulnerable at the same time. Gone was the close-cropped hair. Now there was a man skinnier, but a whole lot better on the eyes, she had to admit. His brown hair was messed up, eyes brown and welcoming. He was panting with the effort of the change, and he smiled at her. Hello, he told her in a South London accent now instead of the northern one she was used to. He made a face, running his tongue over his teeth. Okay, he said slowly. New teeth. That's weird. What? She couldn't help but mouth. So where was I? The doctor asked absently, and then his eyes lit up. Oh, that's right. He gave her a wide smile. Barcelona. Okay, so that's the end of the first book of the Bad Wolf series, and I will post up another one after I finish the Black Butler one. Alrighty, peace out, Knights.